going to talk about Don One, a subway pioneer from the mid-1970s in New York City. Now, Don One's story is very interesting because he comes from humble roots and reaches such a high place. But one false move and his life is changed forever. So we're going to do this story based off of the book by Louie KR, Gasparro. Because if it wasn't for him, I don't think Don's story would have even been told. By the time Style Wars came out, he had faded from the limelight and was living in obscurity. So thank you very much, Louie, for making this book. And you know what? Now is the time to tell his story because his tags were so futuristic. I mean, if you saw him, you're like, damn, that's a good tag today. I mean, that's really good tags. I don't know for sure. From what I've read, I think he's also the first person to paint a Von Bode character on a train. So why don't we do this? I'm going to get my Ken Burns on, show you some photos from the book while I read some passages and give some anecdotes along the way. Then we'll do a tribute piece for Don One. In fact, let's do two. And then we'll close out. We'll call it a video. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Thanks a lot. Don One was born one Giuseppe Joseph Palatella on August 1st, 1959. A son of Italian immigrants from Bari, Italy, they left Europe to seek out the American dream. The family moved to Astoria, Queens, which at the time was a mix of industrial and urban housing. Joe grew up just a few blocks from Queensboro Station, which I'm sure had a big influence on his path. In 1973, Joe was enrolled in New York City's most prestigious art high school, the School of Art and Design in Manhattan. Taking the train from Queens gave him a feeling that he finally made it. He has arrived. Joe took well to the school and learned illustration, photography, and airbrush, which no doubt led to his aerosol obsession. Don One may have been a mythic writer whose name was passed around lunchroom tables, but outside of the school he enjoyed a healthy association with some of the top writers of the day. Some of his circles included Chain 3, Knock 167, Butch 2, and Case 2. He also wrote with the legendary members of the Soul Stoned Brothers, Core 2, Gear, and Dime 139. In 1975, Don One and his buddy Jot 76 were filmed for a BBC documentary that aired on the PBS network. They were filmed on a sunny afternoon doing burners on an abandoned building in a very burnt-out section of the South Bronx. They were both paid $150, which back at the time was a very large sum. There was the usual public works people, police officers, people in the press or whatnot. But the really interesting thing was they interviewed some people on the street. He was an older Italian guy, I don't quite remember, but they asked him what he thought about the graffiti, and he said, well, I think it's revolution. These kids are angry. We live in a violent world. And, what else are these kids going to do? It was pretty interesting to see that, and especially the way graffiti is now. It's changed a lot. And back then it was just kids watching their name go by. And I think that was pretty cool. So I'll be sure to put a link below so you guys can check out that documentary. I think you guys would really enjoy it. It definitely is a great little window into the world of graffiti. And honestly, I think it's a better representation than Style Wars. After the movie, Don embarks on a career that will take him to such a great height that no other writer has experienced. He is now a professional artist doing design work, magazine covers, album covers, you name it, he is a pro. Now this is something that nobody in the graffiti world would have ever expected because these are just kids from the street, writing their name, getting up, doing their thing. But he has transcended to the new level of a professional artist, which is just completely unheard of. So Don is on his way, but something tragic happens along the way. And you know what? I'm not going to tell you that part of the story because I want you to get the book and find out for yourself. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to let that part 2 marinate for a bit so some of y'all can get the book, because it is well worth getting. Highly recommend it. But first, let's talk a little bit about the artwork. So I gotta tell you, I had a really good time working his name. And as you can see, I kind of added a bit of a modern flair to his vintage letters, which is what we're wont to do these days, right? We kind of take a little bit of the past, give it a little bit of the future, and find a place in the middle where we can exist in such a beautiful place. And look at this. It's sharp, it's clean, it's modern, but it has Don's flair in it. And that is what graffiti is about. Biting? Maybe. This is one of Don's signature freight subway panels that he did with the Muggsy character, mascot, or whatever you want to call it, graffiti character, right? Using the character as an O. Now, I don't know if you can tell here, but on the left-hand side of the N, I got a little bit too modern, I think. You know, the way that it sweeps back on the bottom and that little flag or bit at the top, it just looks a little bit too modern with the rest of the piece. And maybe I'm just adding my touch to it as well. And I really wanted to keep it original to his style, so I guess that's just the way it goes. But hey, that's how graffiti is, you know, it constantly evolves, and you take a little bit from somewhere else, and then you add your own flavor to it, and then the style evolves, and then, you know, we all kind of get into this mishmash alphabet soup of letters, you know, and eventually out the other side comes something new and exciting. You know, Don actually talks about it in the book. You know, he talks about biting, where he said, you know, he's like, I don't mind if people bite my letters. He's like, you know, if somebody took my D and I took their N, he's like, that's what we do as writers. We take a little bit from each other and create our own pieces from that. But he was very, very adamant about imposters. He did not like imposters. And there's a really, really funny story about that in the book. And it's really interesting to hear his take on it, because the guys back then had a much more, well, I don't want to say chivalrous, is that the right word? But there was an honor amongst these thieves. There definitely was. Now, this particular piece, I gotta say, I really did enjoy doing it. I would much rather paint this on a wall, to say the least. But it's been kind of rainy, so that's kind of the situation that I'm in. And I guess we'll just have to make a part 2 and talk about the rest of the story when it stops raining. So as far as this piece goes, I'm doing my standard mix of graphic markers for the fill with a little bit of paint pen, and of course crisping up that outline with a Molotov One for All. And this will be a double outline because, well, I'm on the double outline tip, and I rather enjoy doing that. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but on the 3D I put a lot of kind of funky little boxes and hatch marks and stuff like that. I'm actually copying Don One's black books. If you go back through his sketchbooks portion of the book, he does a lot of real funky stuff like that in the black books. Like, instead of the 3D being like this dimensional part of the piece where you're trying to shade it to make it look more 3D, he actually treats it like another surface to lay color on, to make more designs in. And I thought, you know, I gotta get a little bit of that secondhand cool. Oh, also right here, see this? Cleanup work. Everyone does cleanup work. You gotta do cleanup work, homie. Go back over those lines, sharpen them up a little bit, show them your best. And here comes my favorite part, rocking the little chrome effect on the sunglasses. And you know, I did it a few different ways, as you can see here, and then I realized that simple is better. Sometimes simple is better, and that is a beautiful, simple, old school piece.
Don, C-O-N? Yeah. You have to stand way back to see that, though.
See, here goes the D, and then goes the O, and goes that N.
Oh, yeah, I got it now. You the fellas that paint up the trains?
Yep. We quit.
You quit why?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, first, I'm 17.
Oh, you could get in trouble.
Yeah, and I get fingerprinted, and I get a record. I can't afford that.
No way.
Second, you know, you get tired after 4 years.
4 years? You're kidding.
Oh.
Oh, my God. How many trains do you think you painted?
A lot of trains.
A lot of trains, man.
Yeah.
Well, you could turn that artist's work into something profitable, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay, good luck to you.